Howdy.
Hello, hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
How are you doing?
So, what's been cooking in the Neptune kitchen?
Lots of different things. If you had told me that we were going to have this conversation on the 19th of January, and you told me this in between Christmas and New Year or shortly after New Year, I would have told you, hands down, we will have launched BetaNet version 2 by then. And yet here we are, and we have not launched BetaNet version 2 yet. And it's
So,
because bugs, they just refuse to get fixed. And then when they
hang
are
on,
fixed,
hang
then we
on, hang
discover
on.
other ones.
But if I had asked you a question like that, I would have prefaced that question with the question, "What is BetaNet 2?"
Great question. So when we launched BetaNet, we did not have feature parity. There were a few pieces missing. A feature parity between what we envision mainnet to have. And so BetaNet version 2 fixes the gap. BetaNet version 2 is on par with mainnet. Um, when we launch BetaNet version 2, it will be on par with mainnet. Um, and so we will be able to launch mainnet shortly after. Really, the only big difference between BetaNet version 2 and mainnet is populating the Genesis block with the public receiving addresses of pre-mine recipients.
Maybe go over that in however much detail you're comfortable with, because I don't think we've spoken about that and how it's different from like a pre-mine.
It is
Oh,
a pre-mine
mhm.
because the tokens coming to being with the Genesis block, they don't exist before, and once the Genesis block has been mined and disseminated, then the tokens exist. And uh, in order to pay back or reward the people who made this project possible, whether through an investment or in some cases through um, uh, pointing out vulnerabilities and how to fix them, um, they are entitled to an allocation of pre-mine coins, which come from the Genesis block. And in order to make that allocation, uh, we will program the Genesis block with the distribution in place. That's it.
I,
Which
I
means that we
recall.
need the receiving addresses of all pre-mine recipients.
So basically, that means if you were to go back to the start of the Neptune blockchain, once it's rolled out, then you won't see sort of zero balances for everybody, but like the initial investors, they will all have a non-zero balance at the very beginning.
Exactly. And that's because we cannot guarantee otherwise that we will mine anything. And so it doesn't make any sense to sell in advance the rewards of mining activities because you're not sure that you will be successful. Whereas with the pre-mine, since we are programming the blockchain, we will be certain that the pre-mine is there. And also, by the way, if God forbid there turns out to be a vulnerability enabling undetectable inflation, then we will roll back the blockchain to the Genesis block. And so all the transactions and all the blocks that were mined after the Genesis block will be forgotten, and we will reboot with the Genesis block. And the only thing that's certain is that the pre-mined recipients will have their allotments.
Okay, so back to BetaNet 2.
Yeah, and so we pushed out the date of launch of BetaNet version 2 step by step by step by step, and I would have lost money betting that by January 19th we would have launched it already, but here we are, and I think we might launch it tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, the day after, but it's imminent. It's imminent, and we will launch this with a nice announcement on the website and so on.
So just to recap, so that what it means is that the release before the big public release, where you've reached feature parity with all the things that you want to release, that release is almost ready. Um, and so, what's in between beta version 2 and mainnet? What happens there?
We will spend time reviewing security wise all the important components. The Another purpose of having BetaNet version 2 prior to testnet is to invite scrutiny from the community. So please give the node a spin. And if you find a problem, please notify us of those, and then we will fix them. So fixing issues and hardening security. Um, that's what we expect to do for the time in between. And of course, populating the Genesis block with the receiving addresses.
And so it sounds like mainnet launch is quite close, like a couple of weeks. Is that fair?
I'd say that's fair, but we also have a track record of pushing out the launch date. Of
Inflating your launch date, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like most software teams,
is that true?
yeah, notoriously difficult to predict.
But you would expect the predictions to point in the was it to be on the opposite side of the mean half the time. No,
Um,
if it's difficult to predict but unbiased, then it's one thing. Then you just have a huge variance. But from what I hear, it's software developers consistently underestimate the time it takes
yeah,
to build something.
yeah, that's the bias. Yeah, it's like
Why is that?
there's something about software that it's just always unexpectedly complex. And yeah, I'm not sure. Even if you know that fact, and you're faced with an estimate, you still tend to underestimate. I don't know. It's very very weird. Especially try explaining that to like a management type that's never done software. They just their eyes glaze over. I've tried.
How do people get into management of a software development project without having done software?
Well, just the software eats the world, right? So it just appears everywhere.
Uh-huh. And they were already management, and then all
Yeah,
of a sudden the
yeah,
thing they're managing has turned digital.
kind of. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
kind of. But so back on track. Okay, so mainnet launch is around the corner. So how are the spirits within Neptune? Is everyone in war mode already, or what's going on?
We're still sleeping full nights. It's not like we're reducing our time spent sleeping in order to boost development time. But yeah, we can feel that um, the finish line is approaching. We're not just seeing the end at the light at the end of the tunnel. We're actually basking in the light already. Um,
Okay,
but
that's
it's
that's nice.
yeah, yeah. It's good to know that we're really getting somewhere. It's not like half is left and you don't know how far from the coast you are. Good luck swimming.
And how does it work? Because I would imagine if you've built something which can be used in so many different ways, that sort of just like as a sanity check as well, you would just like you would go on there and just like build some small things like holy shit it works, like this little transaction works, this application works. Is that what you've been doing, or do you experience it in a different way?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you rephrase, please?
It's like you've built this these rails on which you can do like many different types of operations, um, in theory. And so my question is, now that it's pretty much built, have you gone on those rails and put it to practice and like done more than just like a basic transaction, but like maybe built like a basic, I don't know, basic application, or
We
is
haven't built complex applications yet. We have sent money back and forth, and we have time locked money as well. So that's money that you can only spend after a certain amount of time has passed.
because when a blockchain releases, that's got like that's Turing complete. Like there's a couple of types of applications that tend to get built, I think, right? Like you've got like a decentralized exchange, and then maybe also stuff that's less complex than that. I guess the time locked transaction is pretty basic. I'm
It's
just I
it's
don't
pretty
know.
basic and pretty fundamental as well because we need it for mining. Because all half of all mining rewards are time locked for 3 years.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can build tokens, um, user-defined tokens, and you can even trade them anonymously. But we haven't built anything like that unless you count native Neptune coins. Um, and I expect that people will, if we don't get to it first, people will do that, and then we'll build decentralized exchanges. It's There is one piece that's making it difficult to build an exchange. Not impossible, you can do it, but it's difficult because um, every UTXO passes through the mutator set and comes out unrecognizable, except to the person who owns it. Um, and that's the privacy feature. And so if you want to record state, like as in an order book in a decentralized exchange, then you update your UTXO. And the way you do that is you consume it and regenerate it. And on the opposite side of the transaction, out comes a new UTXO that only the owner can recognize. And so, how do you make a publicly accessible smart contract using state that evolves in a way that is by design difficult to track?
Mhm.
Well, you need some kind of overlay layer to broadcast to the rest of the world, hey, this is what I look like now. And that's totally possible. It's just a little bit more difficult than necessary. And so, one of the things we want to fix post haste after mainnet launch is we want to introduce lock free UTXOs. And these are UTXOs that do not pass through the mutator set and just live in Merkle Mountain Range.
And so, having spoken to you several times over the last couple of weeks, it always sounded like most of your focus was on sort of heads down development, and not so much sort of how do we evangelize our product in the market once it's launched. Have you is that correct, first of all, and then second of all, have you guys put thought into what happens after launch? What that looks like? Any first ideas?
um, we don't really like evangelization, if that's the word. Even we don't really like marketing. I guess you could call it that, because from our perspective, we want to convince people with arguments that stick and not convince people by popping up on their radar several times um, without arguments that stick. And so we're hoping to make the best possible technology, and and hopefully people recognize that that is the best possible technology, and then they will become evangelizers as a result of that. So from our perspective, it's all downstream from the diehard geeks.
But in terms of development, you still foresee that there will be just full-time work even after launch to
Yes,
just
uh,
okay.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. So a couple of very exciting weeks basking in the light of the end of the tunnel.
Indeed.
All right, let's leave it there.
Sounds good. Okay. Take care.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.